All In Sports Network. We love sports.
How's it going, everybody? Hope you're having a Merry Christmas out there. All In Aggies. Just wanted to kind of set the stage for you as we get ready to head out to Las Vegas. I'll be flying out there on, I can't get my day straight this week, but the day after Christmas. And so I guess that's Thursday and then the game. And then I'll be flying back Saturday after. So you know what they say, after 48 hours, any longer than that in Vegas, it gets a little dicey, no pun intended. So, just being safe and staying true to the advice I've received. This will be my first time. Looking forward to it. But tonight we want to look at, I'm going to have 5 things on my wish list for Texas A&M athletics in 2025 as we get ready to turn the calendar and look ahead to hopefully a magical spring semester and, the fall just a little bit for next football season. If you haven't already, help me out. Hit subscribe. It doesn't do anything for you. It doesn't cost you anything. It just helps us out and helps us make this the best show we can. We're going to be going to Las Vegas. I want to do more of that down the road in the future, and we depend on the support of people like you. All right. We'll start with the top 5. By the way, after this portion of the video, I am going to get to the latest transfer portal additions that came on the defensive line earlier this week. So stay tuned for that if you want to talk on CJ Searcy and Samuel Mpemba. But number 5 on my wish list, actually, timeout. Honorable mention, because I don't want to go through everything. I was thinking about doing a top 10 list, but I thought that could get a little tiresome. I just want to give honorable mention shout out to A&M women's tennis, national champions. I think, if you're curious, I think they have a chance, realistically, to be a runner-up or back-to-back. So that would be high on my list. See if those ladies can get it done. They're going to have at least 2 top 10 players, and we'll see what the rest of the lineup shakes out to be. I think they've got a shot. That would be awesome. They're going to be in Waco, so they're not going to be that far away either. Number 5 on my list, again, for 2025, I want to see if the A&M softball team can make it to the Women's College World Series. I think they've got a shot. Emily Kennedy is back, the ace in the circle. You've got some pitching options added in there as well, a little more depth. You're going to lose, quite a few production of quite a few big pieces with Trinity Cannon, Rylan Wiggins, Julia Cottrell, and the likes of that. But you brought in some really good transfers. Sydney Lessentine from she comes in. She's a highly touted freshman, rather. But you've got I'm thinking of? Ojo Johnson. That's who I'm thinking of. Ojo Johnson. You've got Allie Enright's back. You've got Kylie Griffin could take a step up. I'm just kind of looking through the roster here. Emily Levitt's back in the circle. Mac Barbara is a huge transfer from San Diego State. So she's big time player. You got one earlier this week with an infielder from Florida, Ariel Kowalewski, who had about 9 home runs as a freshman, batted 300. So I think you're going to have the pieces there. If Emily Kennedy can, up her game even more, I think that's a realistic opportunity for Texas A&M. Now we'll get to some of the bigger sports, bigger audience sports, I should say. Softball, big deal in Aggie land. Number 4, I don't know how realistic this is, but I'm curious if we could see Texas A&M basketball get to the Elite Eight. And again, I want to just clarify my wish list. I'm trying to make it reasonable. You don't ask Santa for more than you think Santa is good for, right? You got to keep it rational. That's where, like, if you're the parents, you gotta keep them in check before they go out to talk to the guy at the mall, right? So Elite Eight for men's basketball, I think it's doable. We talked about it with the way they can shoot. I felt like all through last year, they were a better shooting team than they showed. This year, I still think they're better than they've shown to this point. We've seen it in spurts. Pharrell Payne adding an inside dimension in terms of scoring that you didn't have last year with the absence of Julius Marble. That, I think, gives you a little bit of balance. I think Zurich Phelps, huge pickup. I talked about it at the time. I thought that was kind of an under-the-radar pickup, really across the country, to be honest. I'm not saying he's going to be like an All-American, but they lost Tyrese Radford and Wildens Levesque. And to slide in Zurich Phelps to fill in for what Tyrese Radford gave you, that goes a long way if you account for hopefully everyone else progressing, or at least, being at the same level they were at last year. I think the defense is still solid. I'm excited and eager to see what they can do in SEC play. SEC is going to be a gauntlet, but I think that'll serve them well once they get to the tournament. If they can avoid some SEC teams for a while, I think they're plenty good enough. I think they probably will go in as the favorite in their regional to make it to, or into their, what they call it, the sub-regional, first and second round. I think they'll be favored to make it to the Sweet 16. And then I think you're going to see a game similar to like a Purdue, and even a Creighton. I know that some people have been understandably kind of concerned about how some of those teams have looked at times. Some of the non-conference schedules maybe lost a little bit of its shine for A&M, not their fault, but some of the other results. But I don't know. I think they're relentless enough defensively to cause anyone trouble. Wade Taylor still got it. You just need to make sure it doesn't all have to be on him. If Manny Obaski, and by committee, Manny Obaski, Anderson Garcia, I'll throw Hayden Hefner in there, Solomon Washington, Zerg Phelps, if all them together, Pharrell Payne inside, can collectively give you enough so that you don't have to make it all on 4. I think Jace Carter, I think that an efficient 4 and a guy who can pick his shots a little easier is the best type of guy you could hope for if you're Texas A&M. All right, number 3, I'm going to split this up because I've got 2 things. We're going to go baseball here for a little double play. Number 3, I'm going to say Jace Laviolette being the number 1 overall pick in the MLB draft. I don't need to explain to you, if you're an Aggie baseball fan, the accolades, the tools, the skill, the ability of Jace Laviolette. But I'll say it would be really nice to see A&M get that level of spotlight. And, I mean, it's going to happen either way, even if he's like the number 2, 3 pick, whatever he happens to be. It'd just be a nice little cherry on top. And he's a good guy, deserves it. Had really nice interactions with him and just seeing him with the fans. I think he kind of embodies what the school, the program is about. So I think Jace Laviolette would do wonders. And I will say it is something, and, we're kind of waiting and seeing with, obviously Braden Montgomery got picked pretty high. And they've got a few guys through some farm systems right now. But A&M baseball has not in a while had – I mean, if you just look at the active players in MLB from Texas A&M, there's not a ton of star power from Texas A&M at the moment. They've got guys, but they don't have as many people who are like in position to be all-star players or this or that. Let me see. I'm going to see if I can pull this up real quick. That's going to get to be former players. But, yeah, I mean, like Ross Stripling had his moments. Tyler Naquin had a moment here and there. But to have Braden Montgomery, Jace Laviolette, Gavin Grahovac down the pipe, Caden Sorrell, we'll see what he can do. And then you've got the normal guys that you would expect, Ryan Prager and all of them, maybe the day 2 kind of guys, if they can progress and do what they do. I do feel like it's one of those where once they leave the system, it's obviously it's out of A&M's hands, but anything can happen, good or bad. But I think it would be a real nice touch to see A&M start to have not just the results in college baseball and the star power there, but have that carry over to the professional ranks. Same way when you think of like LSU, right? Like if you really want to go back, like Alex Bregman, obviously Paul Skeens, like it'd be so nice to have A&M have a guy like that or a couple. So we'll see what Braden can do. We'll see what Jace can do, but hoping for the best for Jace Laviolette. I mean, either way, he'll have a really high draft pick. It'll be great and be really happy for him. But just if I'm wishing on a wish list, I'm going to say number 1 overall pick for Jace Laviolette. Number 2, Marcel Reed evolves into an all SEC quarterback. I tried to think of one for football. And like one thing, I was torn. I was thinking offensive line, perhaps, maybe defensive line, resurges and becomes the type of front that we've been dying to see with all this recruiting talent over the years. It's probably taken a little bit of a dip this year. I mean, just if you look at this upcoming year's roster, you're probably not going to have nearly as much talent there on that position as you've had in quite a while, just by sheer, recruiting this, that, the other. But, we'll see. We'll touch on that a little bit later with these transfers coming in. But so anyways, I was stuck on a few things, wide receiver. Do you want Micah Hudson to come in and really take over along with Jerome Miles? And obviously if you can get Casey Concepcion, that'd be awesome. Hasn't committed at the time I'm taping this, by the way, if anything changes. But maybe that should be an honorable mention too. But realistically, I think if Marcel Reed elevates himself to an all-SEC quarterback, as we get back on topic here, I just think that opens up so much in the offense. If we get good Marcel Reed, like 7, 8 out of 10 Marcel Reed, 80% of the time, and then maybe flashes of 9 out of 10 Marcel Reed, and the floor increases, I think that'll do wonders for this team. Because I think part of what held them back, I mean, there was a couple things, but offensively, I think the offensive line was much better earlier in the year. I don't want to say they weren't as good as they showed down the stretch necessarily. It might have just been like it finally caught up to them. But offensive line needs to make some strides. The receivers, we've talked about that, not being able to have guys who could just win one-on-one, period, point blank. And then, you're leaning on a run game, especially after you lose Le'Veon, after already having lost Reuben Owens, that they can just sell out. And, if you dare Marcel to beat you with his arm, I don't know if he's consistent enough to do that on a regular basis quite yet. But my hope is that in 2025, that changes. We do start to see Marcel Reed being able to, stretch the defense, the deep ball, and we see what he can do with his legs still. Reuben Owens, Le'Veon Moss back, keep a little bit of that versatility, and see just, again, the tight ends, see what they can do. But I am encouraged by some aspects of this Colin Klein offense in terms of the dynamic ability, the dynamicism. That's what I was going to say. That's not a word. But how versatile it can be. And I think Marcel Reed being able to routinely stretch plays down the field, maybe make the defense back off a little bit, and then hopefully you do get progression in all those other areas. I think that'll go a long way. That's the single easiest way, I think, to see a breakthrough offensively. If you're going to pinpoint one thing, maybe it's the offensive line, but I would argue, I think the offensive line is good enough right now to where if Marcel Reed in the passing attack can be dynamic on a regular basis, then that will sort of help take care of itself, be sort of complementary football within the offense. And number 1, I guess I should say, number 1 on my wish list for Texas A&M in 2025, go back to Omaha and win it all. I mean, they were so close. Michael Early, I like the vibes I'm seeing. I like the confidence. I feel like this team is on a mission. They already were going to be on a mission regardless of any head coaching drama, but you throw that in there, it's going to be the last ride for, guys like Jace Laviolette, as we mentioned, Ryan Prager. You look at also the guys that have coming in, some of the transfers there. Caden Sorrell back in the outfield. I was really excited to see what he did as well. Gavin Grahovac back, but not a last ride for him, but for Sorrell and Grahovac, last ride with this group. Terrible news, by the way, with Evan Ostenbeck. Not him, but with this news about JUCO players who have exhausted their eligibility are going to be eligible this spring, thanks to Diego Pavia, but he's already signed and been drafted and all that. So, but he probably would have come back if he was able to. So that was kind of a brutal blow. But anyways, I mean, beyond that, you've got just all sorts of talent in the bullpen, on the field, in the batter's box, in the coaching box. I believe in Mike Elko. I mean, I do believe in Mike Elko, but I believe in Michael Early and what he can do with those guys. Sorry, I'm not quite as up to speed. I'm trying to remember all these guys on the top of my head that they have coming in. They got the kid from Fairfield coming in. They got, I think they got another Ivy Leaguer on the way. So just really exciting to see what the Aggies can do, get back to Omaha and, wreak havoc once they get there. I think as much of college baseball is skill and ability, it's handling the moment, knowing how to process being on the biggest stages. And it was, there twice, 2 chances to win it all, and came up 1 run short off a crazy slide, ultimately, when you look back on it. So those are my top 5 things on my wish list, almost like a mini pecking order here on All in Aggies. Number 5, again, just to refresh, women making it to the College World Series for softball. Number 4 was Elite 8 appearance for men's basketball. Number 3, Just Laviolette, the number 1 pick in the MLB draft. Number 2, Marcel Reed as an all-SEC quarterback. And number 1, winning it all in Omaha, with an honorable mention to women's tennis also winning it all, as they did last year. They are going to be competing this time in Waco, should they advance that far. All right, let me know what you think. What are your top 5 things that you're looking for? Casey Concepcion was also an honorable mention. Again, at the time of recording this, he hasn't committed. So if you see this and you're already committed, you say you're a bozo, just forgive me. But that's an honorable mention as well. So let me know what you think. Let me know what's on your list. If you agree with that, if you think some of those are a little ambitious, if you think some of those are a little cautious, tell us in the comment section below. Like the video if you enjoyed as well. And always, as always, please subscribe to help us out. All right. Now, lastly, we are going to get to the transfer portal news of the week. 2 editions for Texas A&M at this point. On the defensive end, on the defensive line, at defensive end, I should say. First of all, I got to say, timeout. 30-second timeout, as my friend Justin would like to say. Listen, we talked about it, and this was sort of a thing where I trust Mike Elko. I trust the defensive staff to figure it out. And I don't ever think A&M will ever have, like, the defensive line be a liability. I have to see it with my eyes to believe it. I think they still have too much talent, number 1. And I do think the coaches are relatively, like, I know they still have to prove themselves to some degree, but in that realm, especially with what Mike Elko did as defensive coordinator, I think you got to imagine they're going to find a way to figure some things out. That being said, they are losing a ton on the defensive line. Like the entire starting 4, Nick Scorton, Albert Regis, Shamar Turner, Samar Stewart out. I mean, 3 of those guys out for the bowl game too. So, yeah, it's gonna be kind of a facelift. You're losing some depth there as well. DJ Hicks comes back. I'm trying to think, just off the top of my head. I think Rhodes Johnson might have another year. But anyway, you start looking around, and it's pretty thin on that defensive line. DJ Sanders will come in, I think, be an important freshman next year. But, so portal-wise, there were priorities with, again, wide receiver, which has been addressed, with offensive line, and the defensive line just kind of low-key was one of these, like, they could really use an impact guy there, similar to what they did with Nick Scorton, bringing him in. Now, I don't know that there was a guy available at that caliber, at that level, that you were going to be able to get to Aggie land, but, I mean, swing for the fences, right? Like, you got to try something. So Aggies added 2 playmakers in that area. We'll start with chronological order. TJ Searcy from Florida. he just kind of, the thing I like about him, not only the familiarity with Coach Spencer and Coach Bateman, defensive coordinator Jay Bateman, Sean Spencer, defensive line coach, familiarity there with him at Florida. So similar to Scooby Williams and Jaden Hill, if they believe in him and they'll vouch for him, I generally trust that. The other thing I'm encouraged by is year to year, his progression has been pretty solid. All SEC freshmen with 20-something tackles, forced fumble. This past year, 34 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, fumble recovery. So I like the year-to-year, progression moving up in that realm. He was, 4-star prospect coming out of high school, 6'5", 262. So addresses a need, is trending the right way. The coaches are familiar with him. I like that formula in terms of that being a hit for A&M. Cash Howell, by the way, is another guy coming back. While I think of it, who the Aggies are going to need to lean on quite a bit. And then after that, Georgia, out of Georgia, Samuel Mpemba, he comes over, and he kind of made a splash as a freshman. I say as a freshman, played a little bit more as a freshman, played in 10 games, 6 tackles, did not use a year of eligibility this past year, so he'll have 3 years of eligibility left. There's another guy, former 4-star. Georgia wanted him. I know he's leaving Georgia, and I always say, to be fair, if someone's coming into your program and leaving another, I'm usually cautious about those guys. I don't want to put too much on their plate, and I would put the same thing out there for Mpemba. Like, I get it. He's coming to A&M for more playing time because that's where he needed to go to get that. But that being said, I still think there's probably enough raw talent in there to get something out of him. And he checks the measurables, right? So 6'3", 250, a little versatile. He balled out as a high school kid. High school, he was a monster. I mean, he was playing for IMG, so is what it is. But, my high school senior stats, 36 tackles, 14 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks. Again, I know he's IMG, but still pretty good and exciting because this is, like I said, this is an area the Aggies needed to address. They needed to get some depth to fill in the rest of that defensive line, the defensive structure. You're losing a lot of guys on that D-line. Not just, NFL draft picks, seniors notwithstanding, you're talking about Gabriel Brownlow-Dendy, just off the top of my head. Eni White, Malik Silla, Samu Tamanapepe. Like, you got a decent chunk of depth that's walking out the door in addition to the starting guys. So excited to see a couple guys coming in, just kind of plugging the hole. I really think in Mpemba, I want to see, this is my pardon my ignorance, I want to see if he was maybe injured at all, because something tells me that, okay, I'm not seeing anything about an injury. But anyways, look, he'll be pretty good. And, Aggies are in the mix for a couple other guys. It'd be good to have them in the room, I should say, because you need bodies. I don't think you want to put it all on these freshmen coming in. So you get Mpemba, Cersei in the mix. And let's just quickly look out to the Las Vegas Bowl, because if there's one thing that I'm looking forward to the most, it's how do those guys who are still in the building perform? Because I think this is, until like the spring game, this is going to be your best, closest look as to what that unit's going to look like heading into next year. So I think that's an area I'm circling on my list. Do you make a list for bowl games? That's something I'm going to be looking for in this bowl game. How's the defensive line perform? How's the pass rush look? All that jazz. So progress being made as we near Christmas. All right, that is going to do it for me. Again, thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a Merry Christmas. I'll try to hop on here tomorrow as well, just before we head out to Vegas. Stay tuned for content throughout the week from the Las Vegas Bowl. I say throughout the week, really like day of and leading up to the day. But post-game reaction, all that stuff, all that jazz, hopefully a little bit of highlights. So thank you so much for joining us. All in Aggies, subscribe if you could, and like the video. We so would appreciate it. That's all we're asking for you. From you for Christmas. So if you could help us out, that'd be great. Then Peck, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.